The air in the restaurant is thick with the smell of expensive perfume and something else I can't quite place. Betrayal, maybe, or just the stale scent of a life I never knew he was living. His face, usually a mask of calm control, is draining of color right before my eyes. The waiter has just set down our water glasses, the ice clinking like tiny, mocking bells. I hold perfectly still, my hand gripping the edge of the table, feeling the smooth wood under my fingers. I watch his eyes dart around the room, searching for an escape that isn't there. He opens his mouth, but no sound comes out. His perfect facade cracks, revealing the hollow man beneath. He looks utterly lost, like a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar, except the cookie jar held my entire future. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. It started like any other life, I suppose. Quiet, comfortable. We built it brick by brick, year by year. A small house filled with books and houseplants, mornings that smelled of coffee and toast, evenings quiet with the hum of conversation, or just the shared silence of two people content in their own space. He was an architect, meticulous and steady. I worked freelance, writing, carving out my own small corner of the world. We weren't flashy, we weren't chasing headlines. We were just us. Two people moving through the world together, building a life that felt solid, real. My inheritance came unexpectedly. My Aunt Carol, bless her eccentric soul, left me everything. It wasn't a fortune by billionaire standards, but it was substantial. Enough to change things, to lift the quiet hum of everyday worry, enough to make dreams feel a little closer, a little more real. Enough for a comfortable retirement, enough to help family if they needed it, enough for security. It felt like a gift, a warm blanket wrapped around the future. We talked about it, of course. Sensible things. Investments, maybe paying off the mortgage early, setting some aside for a rainy day. We were a team. That's what I believed. We made decisions together. We planned together. The money was ours. That's what he said. Ours. I didn't notice the shift at first. It was too subtle, woven into the fabric of the routine. A late night at the office becoming more frequent. A new interest in expensive watches. A sudden need for business trips that took him further away than usual. He was always good at explaining things, smoothing over the rough edges of suspicion with logical reasons. Stress at work. A demanding client. Trying to get ahead. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? This was the man I shared my life with, the man who knew my deepest fears and quietest joys. He was my safe harbor. The first real crack wasn't a loud explosion, but a tiny hairline fracture. A notification on his phone I happened to see before he snatched it away. A name I didn't recognize, followed by a heart emoji. My stomach dropped, a cold, heavy weight.
He saw me see it.
His face tightened, a flash of something I'd never seen before. Not guilt, exactly, more like annoyance at being caught. He mumbled something about a work contact, a joke. I wanted to believe him.
Desperately.
I pushed the cold weight down, tried to smooth over the crack myself. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was nothing. But the weight stayed. It settled in my chest, a constant, dull ache. I started noticing other things. The way he guarded his phone. The hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered the room. The faint scent of a different perfume on his clothes sometimes, floral and sweet, nothing like mine. The distance grew between us, a silent, invisible wall. Our shared silence wasn't comfortable anymore. It was just empty space. I started sleeping on the edge of the bed, afraid to touch him, afraid of what I might feel, what I might know. I tried talking to him, tried to bridge the gap. Is something wrong? I'd ask, my voice small in the growing chasm. Are you okay? He'd sigh, impatient. Just tired. Work is crazy. Always work. Always an excuse. The man who used to share everything was now a stranger in my own house. The real turning point came when I found the receipts. Hidden, tucked away in a drawer I rarely opened. Receipts for jewelry I'd never seen, designer handbags, stays at luxury hotels. And the dates, they aligned perfectly with his business trips. My hands trembled as I held them, the paper crinkling like dry leaves. Each receipt was a stab. Each one a confirmation of my worst fears. He wasn't just drifting away, he was actively building a life, a secret life, with someone else. And the addresses on the hotel receipts, they were in cities where his work never took him. The names of the shops, places I knew were outrageously expensive, places we would never shop together, even with the inheritance. A knot of ice formed in my stomach, spreading outwards. Then I saw the bank statements. They were paperless now, but I knew his login. It felt dirty, invasive, but I couldn't stop myself. I had to know. The numbers swam before my eyes at first, then came into horrifying focus. Large sums, transferred out, labeled vaguely as investments or property, but they weren't going into our joint investment accounts. They were going somewhere else. And when I cross-referenced the dates with the receipts, my blood ran cold. The withdrawals matched the luxury purchases. The inheritance. My inheritance. He was using my money. The money meant for our future, for our security. He was spending it on her. The realization hit me with physical force. It wasn't just infidelity.
It was theft.
A calculated, cruel betrayal of the deepest kind. He wasn't just breaking my heart. He was stealing my future, using my own security to fund his affair. The pain was immense, a crushing weight that stole my breath. I felt nauseous, dizzy. The solid ground beneath me vanished. Everything I thought I knew, everything I believed was a lie. The house, the life, the man I loved, all of it a carefully constructed illusion. I confronted him, of course. It was a disaster. I held the receipts, my hands shaking. His face went white, then red with anger. He didn't deny it, not really. He deflected, attacked, accused me of snooping, of not trusting him. He twisted everything, trying to make me the villain. He said I was being hysterical, that the money was our money anyway, he could do what he wanted. He tried to gaslight me, making me doubt my own eyes, my own sanity. But the receipts were real. The bank statements were real. The cold, hard numbers didn't lie. He became aggressive, shouting, looming over me. He didn't look like the man I married. He looked like a cornered animal, dangerous and unpredictable. I backed away, fear mixing with the pain. I couldn't reason with him. He wasn't the same person. Maybe he never had been. I spent days and a daze, oscillating between crippling despair and white-hot rage. I barely ate, barely slept. The house, once my sanctuary, felt like a cage. Every object seemed tainted by his lies. I looked at our wedding photos and felt a bitter laugh bubble up. The promises we made, the future we envisioned, it was all dust. I felt utterly alone, paralyzed by the scale of the betrayal and the feeling of helplessness. He held the cards. He controlled the money, the narrative in the house. I was adrift in a sea of lies, with no land in sight. Then something shifted. A tiny spark ignited in the suffocating darkness. Maybe it was the look on his face, the sheer contempt when he thought he had won, that he could walk all over me. Maybe it was the memory of Aunt Carol, who worked her fingers to the bone for that money, who wanted me to have security and happiness. Or maybe it was just the primal instinct for survival kicking in. I looked at myself in the mirror, pale, drawn, eyes wide with fear, and I didn't recognize the person I saw. I couldn't be this person. I wouldn't let him break me. The despair didn't vanish, but it was joined by a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't helpless. I might be hurt, but I wasn't broken. Not yet. I needed help. Real help. Not comfort, not sympathy. I needed strategy. I needed someone who understood the law, someone who could navigate the tangled mess he had created. I needed a weapon. I started researching, quietly, secretly. Lawyers, divorce attorneys, financial investigators. I looked for someone sharp, someone ruthless, someone who wouldn't be intimidated. I spoke to a few on the phone, my voice low, careful not to let him hear. They gave me boilerplate advice, talked about mediation, splitting assets. It wasn't enough. This wasn't just a divorce. It was a recovery operation. Then I found her.
Sarah.
A family law attorney with a reputation for being a bulldog. Her website didn't have fluffy pictures. It had testimonials about securing fair outcomes, protecting assets, fighting for clients who had been wronged. She specialized in complex financial cases, infidelity. I felt a flicker of hope, the first in weeks. I called her office, my heart pounding. Her assistant was cool, professional. I scheduled a consultation, using a false name at first, paying cash when I got there. Paranoia had become my constant companion. Meeting Sarah was like stepping out of the fog. She listened patiently, her expression calm but attentive as I poured out the whole messy, humiliating story. I showed her the receipts, the bank statements. I laid it all bare, the love, the trust, the lies, the theft. When I finished, she didn't offer platitudes. She leaned forward, her gaze steady. "He's been actively depleting marital assets," she said, her voice low and measured. "Using funds traceable directly to your inheritance for non-marital purposes. This isn't just bad behavior. This is potentially fraudulent." My breath hitched. Fraudulent. The word hung in the air, heavy with implications. "What can we do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She outlined a plan. It was aggressive, risky, but it felt right. It wasn't about revenge, she explained, though a part of me desperately craved that. It was about securing my future, recovering what was mine, and holding him accountable for his actions. The key, she said, was speed and surprise. We couldn't let him know what was coming. If he suspected, he could move the rest of the money, disappear, make it impossible to recover. "We need to hit him fast," she said. "Hard. Before he knows what's happening." The plan involved forensic accountants tracing the money trail, gathering irrefutable evidence. And then, the crucial step, requesting an emergency order to freeze all his accounts. Not just the joint ones, but his personal accounts too, where the bulk of the inheritance money had disappeared to. It would be a shock, a complete blindside. The thought scared me, but it also thrilled me. The idea of taking back control, of turning the tables, was intoxicating. I felt a surge of adrenaline, replacing the constant ache of despair. We worked in secret. Sarah's team moved quickly, gathering everything they needed. I provided dates, names, places. Every late night, every whispered phone call, every suspicious trip, it all became evidence. The picture that emerged was even uglier than I'd imagined. He wasn't just buying gifts, he was setting his mistress up, paying her rent, funding her lifestyle. With my money, my Aunt Carol's legacy. The cold resolve solidified into something hard and sharp, like glass. There were moments of doubt, waves of fear that threatened to drown me. What if it didn't work? What if he somehow found out? What if he retaliated? The anxiety was a constant hum under my skin. Living with him during this time was a special kind of hell. I pretended everything was fine, smiling, making small talk, while secretly gathering evidence and plotting my legal strategy. Every touch felt like a violation, every word of affection a lie. The house was a stage, and we were actors in a grim play. He seemed oblivious, arrogant in his perceived victory. He was spending more time away, his lies becoming more transparent, his excuses thinner. He probably thought I was clueless, accepting, weak. He underestimated me. That was his fatal mistake. The day Sarah filed the motion felt surreal. I signed the papers, my hand steady, my resolve absolute. There was no going back. The legal machinery was in motion. It was a waiting game now. Waiting for the judge's order, waiting for the legal documents to be served, waiting for the storm to break. Sarah advised me not to be there when he was served, not to be home. But I couldn't. I needed to see it. I needed to witness the moment his world, the one built on my foundation, came crashing down. I told him I was going out for dinner with a friend. He barely registered it, already engrossed in his phone, probably texting her. I drove to a cafe a few blocks away, close enough to walk back but far enough to have a moment to myself. I sat by the window, nursing a cold coffee, watching the world go by, my heart pounding in my chest like a trapped bird. The envelope was scheduled to be served at the house late afternoon. I checked my watch every few minutes. The minutes stretched into hours. Finally, I saw Sarah's car pull up outside my house. A man in a suit got out, holding a thick envelope. My breath caught in my throat. This was it, the point of no return. I waited a few minutes, giving them time. Then I walked back. My legs felt heavy, my steps slow. I unlocked the front door, the familiar click echoing in the sudden silence. I stepped inside. He was in the living room. The man from Sarah's office was gone. My husband stood frozen in the middle of the room, the thick envelope hanging loosely in his hand. His face was not just pale, it was ashen gray. His eyes were wide, fixed on the papers. He looked up as I entered. The expression on his face was a mixture of shock, disbelief, and absolute terror. He hadn't expected this. Not this. He expected me to cry, to beg, maybe to leave quietly. He expected me to be weak. He never expected me to fight back, not like this. Not with lawyers, not with forensic accountants, not with a legal order freezing every single account he had. His lips moved, but no sound came out. The color drained further from his face, leaving it sickly and translucent. The confident architect, the smooth liar, the arrogant cheater, he was gone, replaced by a terrified man facing the total collapse of his carefully constructed double life. He swayed on his feet. I watched him, a strange detachment washing over me. There was no triumph, only a cold, quiet sense of finality. The storm I had been living through was breaking, and he was standing at its epicenter, completely exposed. The envelope slipped from his fingers, fluttering to the floor. He made a strangled sound, like air being forced from a collapsing lung. His eyes rolled back slightly. Then, slowly, deliberately, his knees buckled. He crumpled to the floor, a heap of expensive clothes and shattered arrogance. He didn't make a sound as he fell.
Just collapsed.
I didn't rush to him. I didn't feel pity. I felt empty. Satisfied, yes, on some level, to see the architect of my misery finally face consequences. But mostly empty. The man lying on the floor was a stranger. The life we had built, the future he had stolen, it was all gone. He lay there, breathing heavily, his face contorted. He looked small, pathetic. Not the formidable figure who had loomed over me, gaslighting and lying. Just a man who had been caught. I walked past him, towards the kitchen. I needed a glass of water. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. The terror was gone. It was replaced by a quiet strength I hadn't known I possessed. The legal battle was an instant, of course. Freezing the accounts was just the first salvo. But it was the critical one. It stopped the bleeding, prevented him from hiding more assets, from continuing to fund his secret life with my money. The emergency order held. The forensic accountants dug deeper. The evidence was overwhelming. His attempts to fight back were pathetic. He had no ground to stand on. Every lie he told was countered by a paper trail, a bank record, a receipt. The money was traced. The dates matched the purchases for his mistress. There was no escaping the truth, laid out in cold, hard financial terms. He lost everything. The divorce was finalized, weighted heavily in my favor due to the financial misconduct. I recovered the vast majority of my inheritance. The house was sold. He was left with nothing but the debts he'd racked up trying to maintain his facade and the public humiliation of his actions being exposed. His mistress, I heard, left him soon after he could no longer provide for her lavish lifestyle. The life he built on lies and stolen money crumbled. Walking away from the courtroom that final day felt like walking out of a long, dark tunnel into the light. I was bruised, yes, scarred. The emotional toll had been immense. Trust, once broken, is not easily rebuilt. The man I loved didn't exist. He was a character in his own elaborate deception. That realization still aches. But I had my future back. My security. My Aunt Carol's gift was safe, protected. I learned a harsh lesson about the people you think you know, about how deeply betrayal can cut. But I also learned about my own resilience, about the strength that lies dormant until you're pushed to the edge. I wasn't the weak, helpless victim he thought I was. I was a woman who found her voice, who fought for what was hers, and who won. The quiet life I had before was gone, perhaps forever. But the life I would build now, brick by painstaking brick, would be real, built on truth, and on my own strength. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.